The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, Drew McClellan here. It's a little bit before the top of the hour, so we're going to tread water for a couple minutes, but just wanted to let you know that Susan and I are here, and we'll get started probably a couple minutes after the top of the hour. So sit tight. We will get started in a few minutes.
I feel like I should hum some entertaining music or something while people are waiting.
Could you? That would be awesome.
Let's see. What do I know that's music like? Gosh, where's my Neil Diamond catalog?
Unfortunately, anything that we grew up with is now music-like.
So true. My kids are like, what are you listening to? John Denver, man.
A golden oldie.
Yeah. My mom was in love with John Denver and Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, my mom had a thing for Kenny Rogers as well. So I'm sure the attendees are like, what am I listening to? Really sorry, we're just waiting for everyone to show up and talking about the stuff we normally talk about when you guys aren't eavesdropping on us. So
right, exactly.
There you have that.
The important issues of the day.
A little sneak peek into Susan and Drew's brain. We're sorry.
John Denver, Neil Diamond, or Chris Christopherson.
I'm sorry, James Taylor. If
James Taylor.
If you only could do one, it is James Taylor. If you just came in, we're just going to wait a couple seconds, and then we're going to get started. So hang tight. If one of you attendees can just in the question box tell me that you can see the screen, you can see that we're sharing Susan's screen with you. Just confirm that you can see it. That would be awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna kick us off. I want to be respectful that you got here on time, so I want to start on time. So again, if we have not met formally, I'm Drew McClellan from Agency Management Institute. Also on the line as a co-presenter is Susan Beyer from Audience Audit.
Hey, everybody.
And here's how this is going to go. We're going to walk you through. We're going to do a real deep dive into the research. We're going to show you a lot of the data that obviously we could not slice and dice in either the inbound presentation or even in the executive summary document if you've downloaded that. So we're going to walk you through all the questions we asked, all the answers. We will certainly allow for Q&A time at the end, but if you have a question about a specific screen, please do not hesitate to ask it. I'm going to be watching the questions, and I'm just going to, if I'm talking, stop, or if Susan's talking, which is much more likely, I'm going to stop her, and then we'll answer your question right there while we're on the screen. So the more interactive this is, the better. Our whole goal with this is to not really just show you the data, but to help you think about what the data means for you and your agency and what you should be doing differently around that. So with that, Susan, you want to get kicked off, and then we can...
You bet. Hi, everybody. This is Susan. So what we're going to take you through today is a live data visualization of everything from the study. As Drew said, we're going to start with sort of who we talked to, so you have a sense of how big this study actually was. We have respondents. Here's my map loading. You can tell it's a live visualization. 528 agency clients from all around the U.S. We're loading. There we go. So you can see all the zip codes that folk came from. We have a range of roles for these folks. 31% of them are the owners of the companies using agencies. We've got presidents, CMOs, marketing directors, et cetera. And we've got a range of revenues for these companies. So from under $1 million at about 14% to 100 to 200 million, which is where we capped it as 16. So a nice distribution there. In terms of the marketing budgets that they have available, 23% say it's under 250K. We've got 20 in the 1 to 3 million, and we've even got some up at the 8 to 10 million range. So again, a nice distribution of these folks.
And one of the things we'll show you is that in a lot of cases, the attitudes and the beliefs and behaviors of these clients don't vary as much as you would think they would around numbers, but we'll show you where they do as well. So remember, part of our work is the acknowledgement that if you were in a room with these folks, they all kind of look the same, but they have some pretty distinct differences. So we'll walk you through some of that. But for those of you that have budgets, clients that have budgets that are either super small or super large, don't assume that size matters in this case as much.
Yeah, it doesn't always correlate with what we see going on attitudinally with these folks. In terms of how many agencies they have, you can see a lot of them are 3 or fewer. We got 40% that say they work with one agency, about 41% 2 to 3. We only have 7% saying they're working with more than 5 agencies right now.
And again, that correlates to earlier studies we did where in many cases clients are telling us over and over again that they really want to work with more than one agency, as much as we hate it, because they don't believe that any one agency can be good at everything, that marketing has gotten so complicated that they really do believe that they need specialists in certain areas.
Yep, and we definitely see a tendency for some of these folks to hew to only working with one agency, and you'll see why. In terms of the respondent's role relative to their agency, 72% are the primary point of contact for the agency in their organization. We've got a few who aren't the primary point of contact, but are interacting with the agency, some who are supervising the primary point of contact. But most of these folks are the primary point of contact for the agency. So before we look into more sort of demographic and details and other questions we asked on the survey, we want to introduce you to sort of the core of this analysis, which is attitudinal segmentation. For those of you who have seen our previous studies, you are very familiar with this approach. For those of you who aren't, basically, it's a way of establishing where there are groups of people in this audience that hang together, not because of their demographics or even the actions they are taking, but because of their attitudes. It's a very organic mathematical process. We don't decide ahead of time what these different segments are. We don't know how many we're going to find. It all comes from the analysis of the responses that we got from these folks in what was about a 15-minute online survey. But what you will see are groups that are groups of people that are held together based on how they feel about a group of attitudes. So it's a very tight matrix kind of affiliation, and it shows us really what's happening with differences in attitude between different folks in this audience that we researched. So we're going to look at those attitudinal segments first, because that will then become the lens through which we see everything else in the survey to better understand these folks and better help you understand them as you think about your agency's strategy and interactions with clients. So let's look at each of the segments first. So this segment we call lofty expectations. These folks are asking a lot from their agency account executive, and I will tell you, seem to be largely getting it. So these are the attitudes that connect this group. I expect an agency account manager to be strategic, and we can see the average score for these folks is a 6.3. Now the scale's down here. 7 was agree completely, 1 is disagree completely, and here's the midline in the middle. And everybody in the survey had to respond to each of the statements that you're going to see in terms of the extent to which they agree with it. So for these folks, on average, they're much more likely to agree. 6.3 out of a possible 7, very high. But remember, this isn't why they're in this group. It's because all these things are connected for them. I expect an agency account manager to act as if they were part of our team. I expect an agency account manager to have significant expertise in a wide range of marketing disciplines, to be an excellent project manager, to alert me to potential opportunities to improve our marketing, even if there are additional costs involved, to keep me up to date with regard to marketing trends, to understand how I like to work, to think about my business as if it was their own, to quickly focus the agency on new information or opportunities for us, to understand all elements of our marketing budget in detail, to be a seasoned marketer. I expect to develop a close relationship with an agency account manager, and I expect an AE to respond to me right away. And you can see here's our lofty expectations. You're always going to see them in blue, hanging out here to the right on these with regard to their agreement on these statements.
When you look at that list, that's when we think of a client, that's who we stereotypically think of, that we make the assumption, I think, in the business that all clients are the lofty expectation clients. And as you're going to see, only about a third of all clients show up this way. But when we talk to our AEs and when we train our AEs, or when you serve as an AE, this is what we expect the client to want. And I would also argue that for those of you that are still in the weeds of the business and you're still serving clients, the clients that you serve are probably often these folks because they're getting a different level of expertise and strategy and sort of business owner thinking. And so you tend to gravitate to clients that need this kind of, help and service. And these are the kind of clients that sort of cling to you like they're your whoopee and don't want one of your AEs servicing them.
Yep, they expect the agency to really be armpit deep in their business.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at a very different segmentation. We call these folks underwhelmed. Okay, listen to these attitudes, and here they are in orange. Okay. I often find agency account managers to be too aggressive in pitching new services, to be too focused on sales, to be poor at managing our budget, to be poor project managers, to pass information on to us without checking it first, and to be too experienced. So a very different expectation on these folks, a very low bar coming into an agency relationship.
And here, these are the clients that are A, difficult to please, but B, odds are they have had a bad experience. And we're going to show you, interestingly, where some of that bad experience comes from. But these are people who are coming in already defensive with your account people. And you may have started new clients where your AE is like, I can't even start a sentence with a new idea without them shutting me down. And this is sort of typical behavior out of this segment of clients. And unfortunately, as we're going to show you in a minute, there's a good chunk of clients out there that fall into this category.
Yep. Okay, and our third segment in red, we call them shot callers. I expect to have to spend time educating an agency account manager about the best way to market our products or services. I expect an AE to have a lot to learn about my business. I expect them to execute the plan we've adopted without suggesting changes. I would rather deal directly with senior management in an agency instead of an account manager. I expect an AE to try to sell me additional services. And interestingly, I couldn't do my job without an excellent account manager at my agency. This attitude is connected to these others as much as it might seem to be an outlier. So these folks do value their AE, but they really want a very sort of responsive relationship with respect to learning about the business, taking advice, from the owner and executing as directed and agreed to.
These clients are the ones that make our AEs go, I'm tired of being an order taker. And so many of you, if you're owners, excuse me, many of you, if you're owners, you're always sort of pounding on your AEs not to be order taker, be strategic, be strategic. But one of the interesting things I think this study reveals is the fact that sometimes your AEs don't have an opportunity to be strategic because the client wants an order taker. And I don't find the last attitude incongruent with the others. I just think what they're saying is, I need a good minion to do my job well,
Yep.
and I expect my agency to be my minion.
Yep.
And so these are the people who already are going to come to you with a marketing plan, are going to already come to you with a budget, and they want to place an order. And it's not that you can't serve this client profitably. You just need to recognize what they are.
Yep.
We'll talk in a little bit about different ways for you to grow business with a client like this. You just have to go at it a little differently.
Yep. Okay, so we found these three segments. Let's take a look at their size within the audience. And this is, maybe dispiriting to some extent. 45% of the respondents in our study are in that second underwhelmed group. The ones that have low expectations about AE capabilities and what they'll be able to do. Only 25%.
They're also the ones that feel like we're constantly sticking our hand in their pocket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That first group that everybody gets excited about 25%, and the shot callers about a third. So
any questions about those? We're going to go through kind of what they look like in terms of budget and other things, just to show you what that is. But I want to make sure that's a lot of information in a short period of time. So again, remember, I'm keeping an eye on the question box. Hang on, we have a question. So wouldn't you say that the underwhelmed offer the biggest opportunity? Well, you know what? I think they all offer opportunity in their own way, and we'll dig into that. But I do think there's a huge opportunity with underwhelmed. If you show up differently than their other agency experiences, I think you can win their hearts. So I think they're pretty disenchanted with agencies, and if you can sort of show them that you're a different kind of beast, then I think the loyalty you would earn from that could be huge. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything else, it's a function of trust building. And I think the wrong way to go at those folks is to assume that everybody loves agencies and thinks AEs are wonderful. Because that's going to turn these folks off. That has not been their experience. So as long as you can go in with some empathy with respect to maybe their low expectations and then demonstrate something different, I think it's a huge opportunity. Okay. Now, when we go through this mathematical analysis, there are also typically attitudes that sort of fall out of the segmentation, meaning they're not associated tightly in that same sort of matrix affiliation with a group of people, like we saw the statements that we've already been through for these three segments. But I want to show them to you because they do reveal some differences between the segments that are interesting. So, again, our lofty expectations in blue, our underwhelmed in orange, and our shot callers in red. I expect an agency account manager to make decisions with regard to our account instead of passing them along to someone else. Very unified, strong agreement with that. I expect an AE to review agency information or recommendations and provide their thoughts before passing it on to us. This is something particularly that our lofty expectations folks will want. I expect AEs.
Again, that's part of them wanting guidance, and they want you to take the lead, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I expect an AE to understand my job. So very strong agreement from all groups on this. As with, I expect to work with the same AE for the duration of our time with the agency. We're going to talk about this a little more later, but excuse me, but everybody's in agreement with that statement. I expect the AE to be the person managing our budget. Not surprising, maybe. And then these two, where we see real differences, strong disagreement from our lofty expectations folks. I expect an AE to be the person I often find AEs to have little understanding of our business. We definitely see the underwhelmed more likely to agree with that, and our lofty expectations disagreeing. And even more strongly, I often find agency account managers unresponsive. So that is not the experience of our lofty expectations folks, but certainly more likely to be the case for the underwhelmed, that middle group, 45% of the audience.
So one thing on this screen is a lot of you have the strategy of basically hiring kids right out of school and then growing them up into the business. And while that budget-wise is a fine strategy, and in many cases it's great to hire an employee who has not already been misshapen by someone else, so you can misshapen them in your own image. But you can see where having a really junior, inexperienced AE could cause you a lot of trouble based on these expectations of clients. And it's one of the reasons why many of you can't extract yourself from a client relationship, is because you're trying to hand them over to a kid, a young professional, and your clients have expectations that don't necessarily align with someone with very little experience.
Yep, we've got some insights coming up about what's important in an AE from these folks' perspective, and it will reinforce that point. So let's look at some other characteristics between the segments that might be helpful as you sort of work to understand them. So our lofty expectations respondents, a little more likely to say they work in service organizations versus, something else, manufacturing, etc. We do see all three segments across most of the groups. We asked them what kind of customers they serve. They could choose more than one on this, which is why things aren't totaling to 100. But we do see underwhelmed respondents more likely to say that they're doing B2B work. Although, again, we do see all segments in all groups. Our underwhelmed respondents in this study are more likely to say they are the owners of their organizations.
But even if you look at all of this stuff, while there is a slight spike in some,
yep,
again, pretty well distributed against all of these sort of demographic markers. So not probably the best way for you to try and ascertain which category somebody would fall into.
No, you can't tell by looking at these organizations or these individuals.
And my guess is that already, just by some of the attitudes, and this will get much more clear for you as we go on, you're starting to already lump your clients into one of these.
Yeah, we all know all of these, don't we? So let's look at revenue again. As Drew said, we see a distribution. We see, slight upticks here for lofty expectations and over here for shot callers. But honestly, we've got distribution across the range in terms of revenue. And same with budgets, although we do see a little more emphasis on the lower ends for lofty expectations, folks, and you'll see more about this, and a little more on the higher end for our shot callers in terms of marketing budget. Gender really doesn't matter. We see fairly even splits regardless of segment. And we do see something interesting when we look at age. So 57% of our lofty expectations respondents are 50 or older, a much higher percentage, double, than what we see for either the underwhelmed or the shot callers, who are a little more likely to be sort of under 40. So this is a difference that's going to come up. And as we learn more about the lofty expectations, folks, I think this is one of those things, Drew, that might come in handy, at least as a potential clue as to what's going on. You can't know for sure because obviously some of these folks are also in the other segments, but there's a lot of these lofty expectations folks that are in our age range.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Okay. One of the things we asked these folks was whether they had worked in an agency themselves. And I guess I'd like to see anybody who wants to type into the question box, segment 1, 2, or 3, lofty expectations, underwhelmed or shot callers. Who do you think has more experience themselves working in an agency? I'm just curious as to what people think. So if you have an idea on this, type it
in. So if you think they're lofty or underwhelmed or shot callers, so far we have a lofty and a shot caller.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's thinking
A lot of shot
a
collars.
lot of
Oh,
shot collars.
there's a
People are
couple
saying
underwhelmed in there.
underwhelmed, but by far, I would say by our very scientific poll, shot
Yes.
callers won.
Okay, well, let's see if we're right. Um, those of you who said lofty expectations were the most wrong. Only 12% of those folks who think we basically walk on water have actually worked in an agency. 46%, nearly half of that underwhelmed group, has worked in agencies themselves. And the shot callers weren't far off, 35%. Of those folks. So this is an interesting finding for me, because when we look back and talk about sort of the attitudes that those shot callers have with respect to agencies, all of these sort of negative things that we saw, and then we think about that in the context of half of these people having worked in agencies themselves, it feels like sort of a peek behind the curtain, see how the sausage is getting made kind of situation.
Well, I think what they're saying to us loud and clear is, I know that there's a lot of pressure on AEs to upsell, and I know that a lot of them have less experience and sort of fake it till they make it. So I'm on guard for both of those things. So again, as you're thinking about your own AEs and how prepared they are for the work that they do and how much they are being held accountable for upselling and all of that, recognize that if your client has agency experience, and odds are you know that, you really probably need to dial that back, or they're going to get pretty bent pretty quickly, because they know they've seen it. As Susan said, they know how the sausage is made, and they know exactly what you're doing to them. So,
yep. Okay, let's look at sort of how these folks are working with agencies right now, and sort of, again, look at it through that lens of understanding that we have from the attitudinal segmentation. So in terms of how many agencies they're currently working with, many of you probably will not be surprised to find that our lofty expectations, over half of them say they are working with a single agency, more than either of the other segments, although we do have other segments. We have all three working in sort of, all groups of agency counts, but we do see an emphasis here on the lofty expectations, and that makes sense to me, don't you think, Drew?
yeah, these are people that love their agency and that are really, again, these are the clients that we think of when we think of the clients that we love and want to clone. These are the ones that pick up the phone and call us before they make a decision and really want the agency's voice at the table and really count on them. So it's hard to maintain that level of relationship with multiple agencies.
Yep, and they're investing a lot in the agency themselves in terms of sharing information and time and all of that kind of stuff. We asked them sort of what their agency relationships look like, and they could choose any of these that apply. And again, we do see all three segments in all of these relationships. So using an agency regularly for project work, using one sporadically for project work, having an agency involved in annual marketing planning, and then some who even say an agency serves as our marketing department, we have an agency of record. More likely in those cases to be the underwhelmed.
Which I think is an interesting juxtaposition, because before seeing the data, I would have assumed that the lofty expectation people were the ones that were so reliant on their agency that they were sort of their agency of record or marketing department in a box kind of a thing, but really not the case. So,
right.
Interestingly, that those that are less impressed with us are the ones that are forced to work with us on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, and you can see these percentages total more than 100, because as we know, lots of these people are working with more than one agency. So they may have one agency relationship of a certain type, and then another agency that they're working with, sporadically or strategically or something like that.
Hang on, Susan, we have a question. Jeff, I'm not sure I understand your question. The question says, could these be multiple roles for an agency? So are you saying, could the same client have some agencies that are their marketing department, but they also work with someone else as a project? Is that what you're asking? Like they have multiple agencies?
I think it means multiple roles for a given agency. So yes, you could say, yes, an agency is instrumental in our marketing planning, And we also use them sporadically for project work, for example.
Yeah. So yes. Okay. Jeff says yes. That's what he meant.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. All right, how much experience do these folks have working with agencies? Well, they say they have a lot. Large percentages of these folks say they are very experienced working with marketing or advertising agencies, and the rest of them say they're somewhat experienced. So we have very few folks in the study saying that they don't have a lot of experience working with agencies. In terms of their role, again, we can look at the primary point of contact. The majority overall say they are the primary point of contact for the agency. It's interesting to me that our lofty expectations folks are a little more likely to say they're not the primary point of contact, but they sometimes interact with the agency. And as you're going to see in a minute, those folks tend to have more contacts with the agency from a person-to-person standpoint. They got more people involved, I think, on both their side and the agency's side in that relationship. This is what I'm talking about. So the question is, who do you typically work with when interacting with your marketing or advertising agencies? So here we can see the AE or the supervisor, the director of account service, agency owners, etc. They could choose more than one on this. One of the things I want you to notice is that are underwhelmed are a little less likely to say they work with the AE and more likely to say they work directly with the agency owner. Maybe not surprising given their walking in expectations with regard to this person.
But also an interesting insight into how we as owners show up to our clients. Because remember, this is the group that thinks we always have our hand in their pocket and we're too pushy with sales. So what they're saying is, hey, owner, look in the mirror and temper back the way you are selling. And so it may very well be that you have a great idea for them, but it's coming off as a sales pitch rather than you're trying to help them grow their business. So be mindful of how you position that.
Yep, and we've got more data on that coming up too. So who does the agency interact with by segment? Another telling chart for me. So 44% of the underwhelmed and 39% of the shot callers say that the agency is interacting only with them. Only 15% of our lofty expectations folks are saying that, because we've got more of them saying the agency is interacting with them plus somebody else, and even more saying me plus at least two other people. So this is sort of the distributed model, right, on the client side of working on the client side with multiple contacts for the agency, which for me lines up with sort of the attitudes that this lofty expectations group has. How long have they worked with their current agency contact by segment? Quite a while, more than 3 years, sizable percentages, and about half of our folks say it's been at least a year. Notice our underwhelmed segment, a little less likely to say it's been more than 3. And we asked them how well they understand the different responsibilities of the agency contacts with whom they interact. So again, telling for me, for our lofty expectations and our shot callers folks, they are really more likely to say that they understand AE or account manager responsibilities well. Whereas for our underwhelmed segment, they're more likely actually to say that it's the agency owners that they understand better. In terms of frequency of interaction with the agency, we've got 18 to 27% saying they're interacting with the agency every day, larger numbers every week, especially for the shot callers, and few saying that they're interacting less than once a month.
So typically, again, typical for most of us, we're dealing with our clients on a pretty regular basis. So, and it would make sense that the shot callers are the most frequent because they're placing orders, right? And they also feel like they have to provide more direction to their AE or whoever their client contact is inside the agency. So they're going to initiate more contact.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we wanted to know is what opportunities do they have to interact with the agency? So they could either say, I can interact as needed for regularly scheduled accounts reviews or updates, or both. And one thing we do see is that the lofty expectations folks are more likely to say, you know what, I am interacting both on a scheduled basis with my agency as well as whenever I need to.
And remember, this was the group that felt we were very responsive, thought it was important that we were responsive, and gave us good marks for being responsive. So they're obviously having that need met. And it may very well be one of the reasons why they fell into that segment. So, if an agency, if one of the respondents in the survey has an agency that is slow to respond, you can see how that would push them into one of the other categories pretty quickly.
How do they prefer to interact with you? Well, there's a lot of email. They could choose all that apply on this. A lot of email, a lot of phone, in-person meetings, especially these for the lofty expectations folks, a little more likely to say yes, yes, please.
And I do think the text answer is a little reflective of some of the age things we saw. I know when I'm teaching the AE boot camps, a lot of your AEs are getting more and more texts from clients, but it tends to be clients who are a little younger.
How quickly do they think their agency is responding? Their current AE typically responding to various series of requests. So this is about as quickly as I expect, and this is even more quickly. So this is a little interesting to me because when we look at a phone call about an urgent issue, an email about an urgent issue, or a non-urgent issue, etc., right? One of the things that's really interesting is we've got lofty expectations saying this is just as quickly as I expect it to be, but more of the underwhelmed are actually saying it's even more quickly than I would expect. Now, maybe that's a function of their expectations being fairly low.
Right.
Those
blackguards, I can't believe they got back to me.
Right. But, one of the things that this shows really across the board is that for the agencies that these folks have contracted with, they are largely happy with the level of responsiveness that they're getting.
And I think one of the things as owners, assuming that's who most of you are, I think one of the things that we have to be careful about is that we put so much pressure on responsiveness to our AEs that honest to God, they are so chained to their email, they can't actually get any work done. So, one of the things that I teach them in the boot camp is to turn the auto, pinging of their email off and to check their email more episodically so they can actually get a half an hour or an hour of uninterrupted work time. And when I say that, honest to Pete, some of them look like I have just, shown them a horror film, and their response is, my boss would kill me. And my response is, your boss will kill you if you don't get any work done too. So we do have to be mindful that I think we are meeting our clients' expectations around this. And sometimes we as leaders in the organization put undue and unrealistic pressure on our people to be insta-respondent.
So this is an interesting question, I thought. How do you typically feel after an interaction with your AE or the main point of contact that you have at the agency? So again, they could choose all that apply. We had some positive terms here, and we had some negative ones. And what you can see at the top of each group is the percentage of respondents who chose something on the positive list. In this case, 98% of our lofty expectations folks picked something on the positive list, with a lot of them selecting satisfied, and 22% of them picked something on the negative list. Fairly small numbers, but we do see a few popping up for concerned or frustrated. When we look at our underwhelmed, it's interesting to see the same percentage of folks picked something positive, but a much greater percentage of folks picked something negative. And here are our shot callers again. They can almost universally find something positive to say about their typical interaction with the agency, but still a third of them are saying there's something negative in there where they're concerned or frustrated or unsatisfied.
I wonder how we intrigue our clients.
Intrigued, curious, tell me more.
Well, hopefully that means we're talking about something new, right?
Right. No. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about expectations of these folks with regard to their agencies. One of the things we did was ask them to identify the most important characteristics of an agency AE. This is a long list. We're going to look at it in a little more detail. But this is the percentage of folks that picked these things, and they could pick up to 5 of them. So we did force them into only 5, and this is the percentage that chose 5. The winner at the top.
Hang on for a second, Susan. This is a good time to remind you of a couple things, guys. We are going to send out a link to this presentation. We will also include a PowerPoint of this entire deck. So don't feel like, I should have said this earlier, I'm sorry. Don't feel like you have to scramble to write all of this down.
Yep.
Because you'll
have a PDF of all of this.
And you'll have this fascinating video to watch as many times as you would like.
So at the top of the list, expertise in a wide range of marketing disciplines. 46% overall chose that as one of their 5 most important characteristics. And we see high percentages across the board, 58% for our lofty expectations. Years of marketing experience is a second. And those are 2 different things, right? Range of marketing disciplines and years of experience, both overall. This is a little more important, years of experience for the underwhelmed, and you're going to see a little more on this in a minute. Digitally savvy, very important. The ability to adapt to change or challenge without panic in the top 4. More important for our lofty expectations folks than for any of our other segments. Rounding out the top 5 is age, but look at the difference in selection between our groups. Only 9% of our lofty expectations folks said that age is an important characteristic in an AE. 38% of our underwhelmed and 36% of our shot callers said that is the case. We're going to see more about age. A passion for excellence in marketing. Definitely see the shot callers popping up on that a little bit, as with personality. Again, lofty expectations, folks care less about a lot of these sort of demographic characteristics, age, personality, college experience, gender, than our.
Fascinating. Look at college experience across the board. So, as you are struggling to hire and you're looking for people, I think we assume still in our business that everyone has to have a degree. And I will tell you that when I look across many of the agencies that we work with, every once in a while they will hire somebody that they met somewhere that was a great waiter or something else, and they'll take a flying leap on that person just because of their personality or their ability to sell or whatever it may be. And sometimes those turn out to be great employees. So I just think that's sort of fascinating. And reflective of the shift in our culture in general.
Yeah, these top 4, it's really interesting to look at the percentages that these top 4 got in terms of range of marketing discipline and years of experience in digital savvy compared to most of the things on this list that, we hold dear, even strategic thinking. We're going to talk about that more, or clear communication. This is really where the rubber hits the road for the majority of our respondents. I wanted to show you the top 5 for each segment, okay? So for our lofty expectations, folks, expertise in a wide range of marketing disciplines, years of experience, this ability to adapt to change or challenge without panic, comparable to years of marketing experience, digital savvy, and a passion for excellence in marketing. For our underwhelmed, it's years of experience that takes the top role. And then expertise in a range, below that, age at 38%, similar to expertise in a range of disciplines, personality, 29%, and digital savvy. For the shot callers, we're back to a wide range of marketing expertise, years of experience, age, a passion for excellence in marketing, and digital savvy. So some similarities, but some differences too. I wanted to show you the difference by gender. So you could see the things that are at the top are at the top for both men and women. Women, a little more focused on digital savvy and the ability to adapt to change without panic. Men, a little more focused on age. We see pretty consistent responses with passion for an excellence in marketing and personality. We could do the same thing with age and look at our folks who are under 30 versus in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60 or older. And you'll probably notice something right away. Our older folks, and I use that term gently, are more interested in expertise in a range of marketing disciplines. Our younger folks, a little more interested in age. In fact, dramatically more interested in age than our older folks. Passion for excellence in marketing and delivery, results focused, are also sort of hallmarks of this older group compared to the younger ones. So let's talk about this. Gender question. So if you look here, you can see that there are folks, especially on the younger end, who say that gender is an important characteristic of an AE. So it's a minority overall, but particularly among our young folks, it's about a quarter of the folks saying that that is one of the top 5 most important characteristics. So we wanted to dig into gender a little bit. And what we did was look at the preferred AE gender by respondent gender. And we found something interesting. Our female respondents who care about gender, who chose it as one of their top 5 characteristics, 87% of them say they want a female AE. Our male respondents, 89% of those who care about gender say they want a male AE.
So again, this is a minority of the folks, but the ones that have an opinion want someone who looks like them, right?
Yep. And we can look at the same thing with age. Half of those under 30 say age is an important characteristic. It's much less for the older folks, but it's a sizable percentage, especially given that these folks could only pick 5 of these items, and they prioritized age as one of those 5. So we could take a look at the same thing by age. So respondents under 40, 57% say they want an AE under 35, much more like them. We see the same thing when we look at respondents 50 or older. 59% of them want an AE 45 or older. So as with gender,
hang on, Susan. Somebody's telling me that they are not hearing the audio. Are all of you having this trouble? Can most of you hear us? Oh, never mind. Now they can hear us.
Okay, good.
Thank you, guys.
So as with gender, and I want to make sure everybody understands this really clearly, it's not that the majority of these clients care about age or gender. In most cases, they do not. But of those who do, which is sizable groups, especially when we look at our younger respondents, among those who care about age or gender, they want someone that looks like them, as Drew said. They want someone of their gender, and they want someone roughly of their age group.
My guess would be, and again, this is not the data saying, this is Drew guessing. My guess is that the younger client-facing folks have been talked down to by older AEs on the agency side or agency owners. And so they have been sort of had their ears pinned back a little bit by some older folks on the agency side, and or they think that we old people don't understand digital. I'm guessing it's a mix of those two things that sort of influence that age preference.
Yeah. So our recommendation is if your client cares, and it's worth asking, you have a pretty clear roadmap as to how to match them up with an AE. Okay. With which type of agency would you prefer to work? Okay. One option, an agency with all skills and activities in-house. And we see about 1/3 of each segment saying that's what I want. An agency with close relationships to specialists who conduct activities under the agency's direction and oversight, but without providing those skills in-house. So this is the outsourcing model, right, for expertise. And we see our shot callers much more interested in that type of an agency than, for example, our lofty expectations folks. We've got 30% of the lofty expectations saying either one is acceptable, smaller percentages of the other groups, and a small number saying, you know what, it depends on what's going on our account at the time as to which type of agency we think we would need.
So again, I think the insight here is that the lofty expectations, they kind of trust their agency. If you can do it all in-house, great. If you need to bring in some partners, I trust you, great. Either one's okay. I just want you, my whoopee, to sort of drive the bus, right? And I think you see the other two who are a little more leery of their agency and the agency relationship, less likely to think we are capable of having everything in-house.
Yep. So a lot of these folks say their agency requests formal feedback from them about their account executive, report cards, written reviews, et cetera. Majority of the underwhelmed, 58%, 47% of the shot callers, and 42% of the lofty expectations. So about half of these folks overall are currently asked by their agency to provide that kind of formal feedback. Among the folks who are not being asked, a lot of them would like to be. Of those not currently being asked to provide this, a full third, up to 40%, say they would. There are some who say they don't want to do that, and a smaller group that says, I don't know if I would want to do that.
One of the things when we do client satisfaction surveys for agencies, one of the things that we hear over and over from your clients is how grateful they are that you're asking, because it really elevates their sense of importance in your eyes. So to them, the very fact that you're investing in an outside person asking them about your work makes them feel better about the relationship. And in fact, and by the way, obviously you need to respond to what they say, and there's a whole, we can talk about that for a long time. But one of the things that we see is when we check retention for agencies that have some sort of formal third-party feedback to their clients who don't, the retention almost doubles in those client relationships because they feel heard and they feel valued.
Well, and not only heard and valued, they think they're getting better service.
Yeah.
So of the folks who are being asked to provide feedback, we said, do you find this helpful in improving the level of services you receive? And look at these percentages. Overwhelmingly, those asked for formal feedback believe it is improving their account service. Whether it is or not, they believe that it is. So really positive evidence for introducing a formal feedback loop into your client relationships. How do you feel about the amount of time spent by your agency on managing your account and projects versus actually developing or executing marketing initiatives? So this is a big disparity here between our lofty expectations and our shot callers, 3/4 of whom say the agency is doing fine, appropriate amount of time on this, versus are underwhelmed. Only half of whom say that is the case. 34% of them say the agency spends more time than necessary on those type of activities.
And again, remember, these are the people who have peeked behind the curtain because they've worked on our side of the business. So, they very well may understand better the layers of complexity in our project management or things like that, and think it could be more efficient.
Or at least feel they do. Yeah.
Well, and again, they also left our side of the business to go over to the client side. So it may be that there's something about the agency business they didn't love, and therefore view it through a more negative lens.
Yep.
I like to think we couldn't hack it. That's what I
one of the questions we included in the research came from an agency owner, and I thought it was a great question. What an AE should do, if you had 1 hour left to work with your primary agency contact, what would you rather have them do during that hour? Strategic thinking about future marketing opportunities, tactical work to advance existing marketing initiatives, review spending and budget to identify potential cost savings, or coordinate a meeting with someone else in the agency instead of the AE. What's interesting to me about this is that we see all of these segments distributed across all of these options. And while we do see, a little emphasis on strategic thinking here for our lofty expectations folks, and review spending and budget here for our underwhelmed, really, it's pretty close across the board, which only tells me you would have to ask a client that question to find out what they would really want your AE doing if they thought they only had 1 hour left.
Hey, Susan, I want to just pause for a second. Obviously, guys, and I think we warned you about this, we're going to go over an hour to dig through all of this stuff, but we have about 10 minutes left before the top of the hour. So for any of you who have to scoot out at the top of the hour, I just want to stop and make sure I give you a little bit of time to ask questions about anything that we've shown you to date prior to us just continuing to plow on. So I just want to stop for a second and say, A, if you need to go, it's okay, you'll get the video, but you'll miss out on the conversation. But B, anybody have any questions before we keep going as we round the top of the hour? Were agencies traditionally full service or specialist agencies? Did we ask them to segment their agency?
We asked them
what they bought, how they bought.
Yes.
So the what we said to them was, do you get all your services from one agency, or do you use specialists? And if you remember, it was a pretty even split. But we didn't ask them to describe their agency. So
right, we've done that in other studies, but not this one.
My experience is, Jeff, that clients see us how they see us. So you may very well be a full service traditional agency, but if all they do is get PR from you, they might describe you as a PR agency. So I'm not sure clients have a very accurate view. And in fact, I think one of the challenges for a lot of agencies, and one of the frustrations for many of you, is that your clients don't really understand the full depth and breadth of what you do if you are a more full service traditional agency.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we plow ahead?
Okay.
All right, plow ahead we will.
All right, brace yourselves. We ran net promoter scores by these folks with respect to their agencies. For those of you not familiar with net promoter, it's basically a measure of how likely somebody would be to recommend you to someone else. And unfortunately, it doesn't look very good in this case for most of our clients. Lofty expectations. We've got a net promoter score of 28. 43% of the folks say gave us a 9 or 10 on being likely to recommend their current agency to another organization, specifically based on the level of account service that they're receiving. So this isn't about creative or results. It's based on account service. 43% were promoters. 15% detractors. We've got 28 score on lofty expectations, even worse, only 7 on the underwhelmed and 10 on the shot callers. And these are much lower than agencies would want for our own clients' net promoter scores with their customers.
Well, and even the lofty expectations, none of these scores are great. So
no, they're not.
But the good news is you don't have a ton of detractors other than the underwhelmed.
Right. This is the opportunity here.
The middle are like, yeah, they're not bad. So, I mean, if you leveled up just a little bit, we could move them into the promoter score, I think, with some focused effort.
Yeah, typically the passives are perfectly happy with you. They're just not to the point where they're going to sort of speak out about you and sort of spontaneously refer you to other folks. So this is where the opportunity is to increase this. This is definitely low-hanging fruit. We see large percentages of the respondents in those groups. So let's talk implications for some common agency assumptions before we wrap up. So the first one is, this idea that we can get away with hiring young, inexpensive AEs. And Drew, I know you're going to want to talk about this, but when we look at what's important in an AE, years of marketing experience, expertise in a range of marketing disciplines, and this ability to adapt to change or challenge without panic far outreaches age among the lofty expectations, and even outbalances age in the other segments.
So you have to ask yourself, how does one get years of marketing experience without also aging? And I would argue that sometimes years of marketing experience ages us prematurely. But so I don't think that they're saying they want 22-year-olds. I think what they're saying is it's not the age per se that matters. It is the depth of expertise and the years of marketing experience. But when you show up with a fresh-faced kid right out of school, understand that puts all 3 of these client groups on edge, because they're concerned that, naturally, that how can a 22 or 23 or 24-year-old have years of marketing experience or expertise in a wide range of disciplines? So it really is going to be part and parcel of that AE's responsibility to very quickly demonstrate their expertise if they have it. and to prove that even though they may be young, they are a good strategic thinker and they do have experience or expertise in terms of schooling or life experience in marketing disciplines. And also, I think we would all agree that sometimes the younger AEs are quicker to panic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's also about coaching them, you know, to be like the duck, where above water they look perfectly calm while they're paddling like mad underneath the water. They need to not, they need to have a poker face and not show when
Yep.
a client change or a challenge is sending them into a tizzy.
The other thing I think this speaks to is putting the onus on agencies for their training programs and for demonstrating to clients the kind of education and training that their AEs are getting across a range of marketing disciplines, et cetera, to sort of reassure clients, even when they've got an AE on the younger end, that they are getting expertise from the agency in some sort of formal way. Okay, here's another assumption. We're just going to keep trying AEs until we find the right fit for the client. We'll just slot them in and out until we find somebody that they like. Most of our respondents say they expect to work with the same AE for the duration of their time with the agency. So this is something that you have to think about, I think, before you assign somebody.
Yeah, so this is, it's not that you can't swap out, and it's not that circumstance doesn't put you in a position where you sometimes do have to swap out AEs. Just know that it is one of the things that is most disconcerting to all clients, regardless of which segment they fall into. So again, this is where a lot of you as owners get sucked back into the day-to-day because you're trying to reassure the client that everything's going to be fine. So be really mindful of matching account people to clients. And, if you have somebody who's brand new and you're not really confident that they're going to stick around, maybe they need to be the number 2 on a client for a while rather than the main point of contact until you're more confident that they're a good fit and that they're going to stick around and that they like agency life.
Demographics matter when assigning an AE. We covered this a little bit, but we can see those who care about gender want an AE of their gender. Those who care about age want an AE of their own age. So, I know when I was working in agencies, there was sort of this expectation that an older male client might feel more comfortable with a non-threatening younger female AE, et cetera. And for the most part, people want folks who look like them if they care at all.
And really, again, I think what we heard is from most of them, it's not about gender or age. It really is about, I want an experienced person assigned to my account.
Yep. Clients hate being upsold. Standard trope of the agency business.
And Susan, we got a quick question. How can we determine if they care about which? Are you asking if they care about age or gender? Is that what you were asking about, Corinne? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is one of those things that you can watch for subtle clues and you can watch how they react to different people in a meeting. So, it might be that in a new business prospecting meeting, you purposefully blend genders and ages and see if the person gravitates towards one or the other. But remember, this is a small sub-segment. So it's a 25% or less of people care about either.
Right.
But I might test them a little bit to see how that is. Okay. And then Joshua, as small agencies, how do we get the AEs to stick around for more than 2 to 3 years while they're looking for faster growth? Oh, Joshua, that's a long conversation.
Yeah, you should pull our last year's study.
Yeah, so we did a study last year where we talked to almost 1,000 account exec or agency
employees. Yep.
About what matters to them. And if you go to either Susan's or my website at AMI, you can download that study and feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to have a chat with you about it because it's a common problem for many of you. And there are ways that you can really lock them in. And by the way, it does not mean making them a minority partner. You can really lock them in for a longer haul if you put some things in place. So happy to chat with you about it, but you might enjoy the insights out of last year's study.
And we're going to show the URLs at the end of this presentation to download all 4 years of studies which are available on both of our sites.
Yep.
Okay, so clients hate being upsold. This is an interesting one for me because when we say, I expect an agency account manager to try me to sell me additional services, the percentage that strongly agree with this, only 15% of our lofty expectations say that is their expectation, about half of these other folks. But when we flip the coin and say, I expect an agency account manager to alert me to potential opportunities to improve our marketing, even if there are additional costs involved, we get a whopping 82% of our lofty expectations and a higher percentage even of our underwhelmed to say that is something that they would be interested in. So I think this is about framing with respect to selling you something else or opportunities to improve their marketing.
Yeah, I think this speaks to our salesmanship. And when it feels like we're selling or we're putting our hand in their pocket, they don't like it. When we are helping them grow their business and it just happens to include work that we can do for them, they like it. So I think this is about, and this may be you as the owner, it may be your leadership team, it may be your junior woodchuck AEs, it's probably all up and down the organization. This is about phrasing our sales pitch, if you will, in a way that doesn't feel like a sales pitch, where it really does feel outcome-based, benefit-based to the client, as opposed to, hey, we should do a newsletter or whatever it is.
Yep. The other thing this speaks to, and Corinne says, the keyword sales, no doubt.
Yep.
But the other thing that this speaks to is how important it really is to understand which of these groups your client is in, because look at the different level of interest in these potential opportunities with potential additional costs. If they're a shot caller, they are much less likely to welcome that. In fact, they would rather you outright try to sell them something else than frame it this way, because remember, these folks want you to execute against the plan without adding a bunch of rigmarole and additional cost into it once it's been decided.
And I don't want you telling me how to run my business. I will tell you how I'm running my business. So again, you have to have a sense of which one of these your clients is to know how to frame your sales pitch appropriately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, clients with agency experience understand us. I remember this from my agency days. So it's great to work with people who have agency experience. Well, about half of these folks in the underwhelmed segment, the segment least likely to think we're fabulous, have agency experience. So I don't think you can rely on a client with agency experience is going easy on you.
Well, if anything, they are the most critical of us and the most underwhelmed by us. They're the least enamored with us.
Yep.
And again, I think that's because they worked in the bakery, so they know exactly what happens before we put the pie out in the case.
We don't want to be order takers. This is a comment, as you said at the beginning of the webinar, Drew, from a marketing agency standpoint. That's not what we do. Just to point out, though, that those order takers are 63% of them have bigger budgets, $1 million or more. So it's a sizable group, and they have a lot of money to spend.
And again, the research doesn't show this, and there's no way to really ask this in a quantifiable way. But you would assume, to a certain extent, that clients inside bigger organizations with bigger budgets may be a little more sophisticated. And so they do probably have a better idea of where they want their company to go. And they may very well be justified in being more of the order giver than they are being more collaborative, whether we like that or not.
Yep. Okay, so this is my favorite. As a former director of strategy at an agency, clients want a strategic advisor, right? That's what we're there to do. That's what everybody wants. Unfortunately, the terminology I don't think is helping us. Strategic thinking is pretty low on the list of what's important when choosing an agency in an AE, right? Strategic thinking, even for our lofty expectations folks, is only 23%. less than half of when we say we've got expertise in a wide range of marketing disciplines, years of marketing experience, digital savvy, strategic thinking is pretty low. And so I think that terminology may be frightening clients. I know in my agency days, we would have clients who said, I thought strategy was what I was getting as part of this relationship. Why do I have to pay for it?
Well, and I think strategic thinking sounds a little esoteric, and I think that especially today, clients want nuts and bolts, deliverable results, and so they believe that our years of experience and our expertise in the discipline, and obviously the fact that we're digitally savvy, is driving to results. And strategic thinking, I think they see that as more everyone sitting around a conference room pondering.
Right. Well, and I go back to this. Right? Alert me to potential opportunities to improve our marketing. That's strategy is what that is.
Right.
But it's framed in a different way.
Yeah. So Corinne is saying clients want deliverables. They want to count the items at the end of the week. I don't know. I would tell you in my own experience, and again, this is not out of the research, I would be careful about that, because at the end of the day, if all we're selling is stuff, we're a commodity. And so I do think they want deliverables, but I'm hoping we can move them to the deliverable being tied to metrics that are deliverable rather than things. Like rather than a flyer or a brochure or a landing page, rather than counting those things, they're counting leads or sales opportunities. And we have to reframe the way they look at our work. And some agencies are better at that than others.
Yep. Chris Thierry has a good question here. Clients want expertise in a wide range of marketing disciplines. We've been hearing a lot these days about them using multiple agencies because they want specialists. So let me clarify. They want expertise in a wide range of disciplines in their account executive, right? So I think that's, having run an account group myself, I think that is different than expecting your account manager to be able to run your SEO program or build your website. Right? They want your account manager to be able to pull together the disparate opportunities available and understand them well enough to guide the client appropriately. So
I think this is about wanting them to be the quarterback on the team, not necessarily playing all the positions, right?
That's right. So I agree with that.
They want you, and here's really what they want. They want you to understand it all, so without making them feel stupid, you can explain it to them.
Yep. And really be on top of what opportunities, the marketing industry is exploding with opportunities for clients, and they really want their AE to be on top of all of that. Yeah. Rusty says, isn't strategic thinking and counsel the outcome of expertise in years? Well, one would hope so.
Yeah, but again, Rusty, I think that's not what they want to buy. They want to buy the results. They want to buy the leads or whatever it is, whatever the metrics are. That they're going to be able to walk into the C-suite or their board of directors or their wife or whatever and be able to go, look, I'm spending our marketing money well because we got this. So yes, I think the strategic thinking and counsel we know is the precursor to being able to deliver results, but they want to cut to the chase. They want results.
Yep, and I think maybe just the terminology is turning people off. So, there are a lot of things that are the result of strategic thinking, and we need to be maybe talking about those because clients seem to be responding better to those than the strategic thinking turn of phrase itself. So we talked about it a little bit, but we do this every year. We've got 4 years now of studies. You can see the URLs here for Agency Management Institute. You can download these, and also on my site, audienceaudit.com. They all take sort of a different angle at this. Most of them are research with agency clients. But last year we did one on the agency workforce itself and what motivates them and how to retain them. So those are all available on my site too. You can actually, if you're interested, submit an idea for next year's topic because we're starting to work on next year's Agency Edge study as well.
Okay, a couple more questions. If you were to ask 1 or 2 questions to determine if a potential client was lofty, underwhelmed, or a shot caller, what would those be? I'm not sure that there is a magic 1 or 2 questions, but I think there are clues to look for.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's going to define a shot caller is their belief that they know what's best and their expectation that you will listen and execute on their recommendations. I think you're going to hear something very different from the lofty expectations folks who are really looking for your expertise and guidance. So I think that's one of the clues to separate out those shot callers, certainly.
I think another question to ask, or another sort of area to probe, is their past experience. So tell me about your previous experiences with agencies. What have you loved about working with them? What has been frustrating for you? And listen for clues there. And then obviously for the underwhelmed, one of the big questions I would ask is, have you always worked on the client side of the business?
Yep.
And have you ever worked on the agency side? So some of those sort of things. I think also talking about sort of how they view the partnership, and are you their only partner? Are they going to be monogamous, or are they going to be working with a bunch of people? Which Tony also asked your question. You said at Inbound, you mentioned that when an agency calls themselves full service, it's perceived that the agency is lying. And one of the things we heard loud and clear is that in one of the studies, I think it was a 2015 study.
Yep.
And actually a little bit in 2014 too. Clients don't believe us when we say we're full service. Because it's pretty tough today to be full service, as complicated as our world has gotten. So I think what you can say is that you are, how would I phrase that? I think you can still say full service, but I think you have to add the sentence of, and if we don't do it in-house, we have strategic partners to deliver against specific executions. Like, for example, many of you don't have a full video department in your shop anymore, although many of you are going back to that. But right now, many agencies are outsourcing video work or other things. So I might talk about, we like to quarterback the efforts. We like to really drive the marketing strategy. Most of the work happens underneath our roof, but we also have strategic partners if we need something specific that is outside our core skill. I'm not sure that I would use a sentence, but a phrase like that might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think the fact that agencies can curate experts for certain types of things. I work with a lot of agencies on the research, and they're positioning that expertise, and it comes from trust, right? With your account executive, with your agency, that we should bring this person in. They'd be terrific for this. I also want to add, Tony, on the how to tell a potential client. One of the things to watch for, I think, with lofty expectations folks, is that they are more willing to be transparent with their own information, budgets, objectives, company goals outside of marketing, et cetera. So if you've got somebody who is really willing to cough up a bunch of information to you, that's a pretty good sign that they may be lofty expectations. Now, the shot callers are going to give you a bunch of information to read that tells you about how to market their stuff. The lofty expectations folks is going to be a little different. They're going to share the highs and the lows, the things they're challenged with. They're going to share numbers with you.
Hey, JR, I clicked on your question to read it, and instead I deleted it. Can you ask it again? Sorry.
It says, if you have time, can you explain what a net promoter score is? And is that something that needs to be part of an agency's overall marketing strategy? So do you want to take that, or do you want me to talk about it?
No, I would love to hear you talk about it.
Okay, so net promoter score is a tested, sort of standardized approach to understanding how likely people will be to promote you. And the way it works is you ask a question like this: how likely would you be to recommend blank to, and it could be, another organization, someone looking for a college or university, et cetera, right? How likely would you be to recommend? And you give respondents 10 options, 0 to 10, with a 10 being extremely likely and a 0 being not at all likely. Okay, and they just pick one. And then to calculate the net promoter score, and you can look online too, you can Google how to do it. It's fairly straightforward. Basically, you take the percentage of respondents who are in this 9 or 10 rating group called promoters, and you subtract the respondents who said 0 to 6, who are considered detractors, and you don't do anything with the passives. You leave them out of the calculation. And that is how you get to your Net Promoter Score. The highest you can get is 100. You can have a negative Net Promoter Score. It's ugly, but it's possible. And it is something that you can track over time with clients. So for example, if you have regular feedback, this could be one of the questions that you could incorporate. How likely would you be? And if you want to focus it on your account service, you can, or you could focus it on the creative, or you could focus it on the agency overall. How likely would you be to recommend us to somebody else looking to, to another organization looking for an agency?
When we work with agencies, we use this actually for their employee satisfaction. So asking a single question, basically on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely, if you had a friend looking for a job, how likely would you be to recommend that they apply for at our agency? So it can be a very simple way to get a very quick look at who's out there celebrating you and who's sort of, in the middle.
Yep. And you can watch it over time.
So is there a standard site or something public that Net Promoter scores live like Glassdoor? Not that I know of. You mean that Net Promoter scores agencies? Is that what you're asking? If so, not that I know of.
Most organizations Net Promoter score themselves.
Yeah, it's more internal.
In customer satisfaction or something like that. Although sometimes if you Google, sometimes you will see Net Promoter scores for brands like Apple or whatever, that are bragging about their Net Promoter score. So root around on Google a little bit.
Yeah, so Corinna's saying basically on the whole idea of hybrid versus full service outsourcing to quarterbacks, clients have also said, well, how do you know that these people that you're outsourcing to are good at what they do? And also, how do they fit? I do think that that's what clients want to know. They want to know, and again, I think this is where if you have experience with them, you've worked with them before, you talk about how great you work together, and you can give some specific examples, that puts the client's mind at ease. What they don't want to get into, and we saw this in our previous research, they hate getting in the middle of pissing matches when they have multiple agencies in the mix. They hate how agencies try and throw each other under the bus and try and steal work from each other. So what they're really asking is, are you guys going to play nice together? Do you know them? Do you like them? And ultimately what you need to say is, worked with them a bunch of times, works really well, will still be driving the bus, so don't you need to worry about that. I just want you to know that we're partnering with them to get this thing done, whatever that is.
Awesome. Any other questions? Assuming we can contact you if we have a project that requires in-depth research and/or feedback surveys. Yeah, you can.
You bet.
You can contact either one of us. Drew on sort of helping your agency get the feedback surveys up and running, as well as a lot of other great agency topics. And certainly me, if you want to implement research like this for an audience, for one of your clients, or even for your agency, to position yourselves as thought leaders or whatever you want to do. Absolutely.
Yeah,
or if you have any questions.
Yeah, we're always happy to answer questions and talk to folks.
Jeremy says the why agencies get hired link isn't working on your site. So you can double check that.
I'll get it fixed today, Jeremy. Thanks for the heads up.
And you can go to mine too if you need it. We've got them, both are the same thing on both sites. So
we just updated our website a little while ago, and apparently it's not working. So I'll get it fixed today, though. Any other questions, guys, for us?
If you do have any other questions, once you get the PDF of this and look through it, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask us. And if you have ideas about what you would like to see us research for the benefit of agencies, please take a moment, go to the audience audit site at this link, and you'll see a little form there that that you can submit ideas. We're always looking for ideas that would be helpful to agency owners. So give us your thoughts if you have them.
And all of you will get an email out of the GoToWebinar system. I think it's 2 days from now, that will give you the link to the video and the PDF of this presentation. So just watch for it. If you don't have it by the end of the week, just ping me at drew@agencymanagementinstitute.com and I will just send you the link. But it should be automated, but you know how that goes.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. It's always fun to go through this.
Happy to stick around if you have questions. So,
Yep. You're welcome.
or if you would like Susan to
Guys.
close us out with some singing of some Muzak, which she
Yeah,
started
that
the
would be.
presentation with. That was nice.
We still have to pick between Neil Diamond and
John
James
Denver.
Taylor and John Denver.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. I'm glad you guys found this helpful.
All right, guys, last call. Any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to shut it down and let you get back to work. All right, watch for an email. If Susan or I can be helpful, please shout, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.